Hello everyone! Today I am going to give you the most comprehensive tips, all the information, the most comprehensive video on jigs. All different kinds of jigs. How to fish them, colors, where to fish them, why, and trailers as well. And different trailers for different circumstances and watercolors and things like that. I'm doing this because I get a lot of questions about jigs. Anyone that knows me or knows my channel knows that I always have a jig tied on. It's the one bait that I always fish, a jig of some sort. Everyone knows I love bladed jigs, but I love jigs of every kind. If someone was like, you can only fish one lure for the rest of your life or whatever, it would be a jig of some sort. Not even a bladed jig, just probably like a swim jig would probably be, because you can do so many things with that. But a jig of all different kinds, they're for certain things, but they're all very versatile. And for new guys, they look at jigs and they kind of see they're kind of intimidating, I guess, or they don't know how to fish them, or they also just think, oh, that doesn't, it's not as flashy as a crankbait painted all cool or whatever. So I get a lot of questions from you guys. So we'll go through 4 different kinds of jigs. It's pretty much all the jigs you're going to need. Bladed jig, obviously. Flipping jig. Swim jig, and then one that you definitely need to be tied on, have tied on right now, football jig, right now in the summer. So we'll go through all those, and trailers, a bunch of different trailers, and colors and all that, and how to fish them. So let's start with the one that I actually said that you need to be fishing right now in the summer. Football jig. In the heat of summer, you will catch your biggest bass on a football jig. Football jigs are made for deeper water, rocks, brush piles, things like that. Not grass. No grass. These things suck in the grass. Obviously, with that big fat head, they're just going to snag grass up. But hard structure, things like that. A football jig, cast it out in the deep water, on the drop-offs, on those rocks, lay-downs, whatever, brush piles, how deep, whatever. Dragging this thing through, you are going to get big fish to bite this thing. Now, it's a little slow. Yes, dragging it along the bottom, it is slow. It sucks. Whatever. It can be slow, but really it's not. I mean, if you fish right, cast it, you drag it pretty slowly, you can give it some pops, whatever. The other thing that I like a football jig for, I actually like it for skipping. Skipping under trees, under docks, whatever that you need to skip a bait under. People say, oh, you don't want to skip with a football jig, the head's too flat and too big, it'll make a big commotion, whatever. For the way that I flip, when I'm like casting to flip, the football jig just seems to work for me a lot better. I can just skip that thing like crazy under there a lot better than I can, say, just a flipping jig or whatever. But that's just kind of me. I guess that's all relative. But I also do like flipping and pitching it and everything if I want to fish it really slowly. With, like, say, a flipping jig or whatever, I'm more just kind of pitching it in there, letting it hit bottom, maybe giving it a pop or two, and then pulling it back out and pitching it again. With, like, a football jig, because this thing, it sits perfectly like that, up, claws out like crawfish. You can let it sit there and just soak a little bit, and if the bite's tough, but you know, maybe I tried pitching in there, wasn't getting bites or something, but I know there's one in there. Fish a little slower. This sucker, let it soak. I don't know, it's just something that I really like. Or maybe in sparse cover, whatever, pitching in there, letting it soak a little bit, and then just dragging it out. But really, these are made for fishing deep, along hard structure. Okay? Like I said, not grass. So that is the football jig. Next, let's go to the flipping jig, because I was kind of talking about it. Oh, and the football jigs that I really like, and like I'm saying, you don't need to buy this exact one, whatever. This is actually a Missile Baits Mike Iaconelli headbanger jig. I don't know. I started using this thing a couple years ago, and it's just awesome. It's just the way it's set up. It goes through cover awesome. Never really get this thing hung up. And it's just a really, really cool football style jig. Real flat head on it. It sits beautifully. But really, and I have tons of other brands of all these jigs. These are just the one brand if I had to pick for each of these, what I like, whatever. There's a bunch of other ones obviously in the box and all that, but if I had to pick one, it would be this one for the football jig. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I was gonna say something else, I forgot what it was. Must not have been important. Anyway, flipping jig. Now, flipping jig, obviously, like I just said, you're pitching it into cover. You're casting it into that thick cover or grass. Dropping it into grass, punching it into grass, things like that. But really sparse cover, little pitches, light into the water, really letting it fall, and then just giving it a couple pops, and then making another pitch. Pretty much. I mean, if I'm going to throw a flipping jig, pitching jig, that's pretty much how I'm going to be fishing it. Now there are also times where I might swim it out, whatever. But really it's just to get into the cover nice, quietly, and just make multiple pitches around cover, and fish it pretty quick, kind of power fishing it. This is a Outcast tackle. I think this is the Cage fighter jig, pretty sure. I don't know, he's got a couple. I actually like the other one, he had two. Sub fighter, Outcast tackle. They make pretty cool jigs. I just started using these a couple months ago, and I just like everything about it. It's tungsten too, so the head's a lot smaller, which is nice for slipping into the water nice and silently when you're pitching around, and also slipping into grass and things like that, into tight cover. It's a really cool jig, and this one I haven't even used yet. Actually, the last little headbanger jig I haven't used yet either. Some nice new ones for you to look at. But, you know, really, those, you want kind of just a tight head. Here's another one that I really like too. This is the 6 Sense Divine Hybrid Jig, which actually this technically isn't for pitching, as they say. It's more of like a swim jig slash football head jig. But I really actually like this thing for pitching and then swimming it out, really. And it's just a well-made jig. So there's those. Yeah, we'll just go with the swim jig next, I guess. Swim jig. So, this is a swim jig. As you can see, it's got like a pointed head on it. And seriously, with the swim jig, you are casting it out and reeling it in. That's pretty much it. I do also pitch them around, like I said, and then swim them out, whatever. Now, for a swim jig, I like these around the harder cover, the trees, the sticks, things like that, I will go to a swim jig rather than a bladed jig. In grass, I want that bladed jig. But around harder cover, throwing that in there, are also deeper too. I find that slow rolling the swim jig, like mid water column and kind of deeper water, seems to work a lot as well. The chatterbait, bladed jig, whatever too, but I don't know, there's just something about the swim jig. Clearer water, quieter days, you know, the not wind chop. A bladed jig or a swim jig will get more bites than a bladed jig. This is a Bravarni Baits. It's kind of a little small little custom swim jig company. He makes really awesome swim jigs. You can see this is kind of a funky bluegill color. We'll get into colors in a minute, but really cool little swim jigs that he makes, and pretty cheap. And they have wire trailer keepers, which is a big plus for me. Those other two jigs I talked about don't have them, but I like the jig so much that I just kind of deal with it. But if I'm picking a jig straight on the trailer, I want these wire keepers. They work so much better than barbs. It's just ridiculous how much better those wire keepers are. Or a screw lock too. You can do a screw lock keeper as well. But those are kind of a pain, I guess. Now we'll go to the bladed jig. And really, I kind of already said everything I need to say about it. Grass, I'm going to use a bladed jig. You can also flip it and pitch it. If you want to, I do often, you know, pitch it around, but it will get stuck on sticks. Chatterbaits, bladed jigs, they hate sticks. This blade actually is what gets caught, or it'll get caught and then end up stabbing with the hook right into that, right into the sticks. They do not work well in sticks, hard cover. They can kind of suck in rocks. I do still actually kind of fish them in like rock dam, shallower, rocky areas. If I just want to slow roll something over them, I do still do it. I also throw them around sticks too, because I don't care to lose a bladed jig. Because you have to almost get these things snagged to get a big bite on them, to be honest with you. And I think that's why a lot of guys, they can't catch fish on them, or whatever. They're too scared to throw them where they need to be throwing them, and they don't know how to get them out, or work them to get them out of the grass, or out of the sticks and things like that. Or they're just too scared and they don't want to do it. And therefore they're not catching the big fish. This thing, I am slow rolling through grass, any water depth. You know, this and the swim jig, I can fish any water depth, don't care. That's why I love jigs so much. But any water depth. But this one, if there's grass around, water's dirtier, there's chop on the water, it's probably going to be a bladed jig, not a swim jig. Dirty water too, the swim jig can thrive as well, but anyway. And I'm just slow rolling through the grass. You get hung up in grass, you start to hang up in grass, pop it out of that grass. Either, if you got it, freaking pop it like that. I was just fishing today, I had to do that all freaking day, because the grass was so thick. In the middle of summer, it's really thick. But especially in like sparse grass, this thing, you know, you get kind of caught in those little stalks, you pop it out, that's usually when you're going to get the big bites. That is really how I fish this thing most of the time. If I got a jig on, or a bladed jig on, I'm usually fishing in grass. And the ones I like are the customs, sold that are Tackle Warehouse exclusives, whatever. You know, $4 or $5. That's why I don't really care to get them hung up. I do fish the jackhammer every once in a while, which I actually never really used to. I do fish them every once in a while. I really don't see much of a difference. Just get you some customs, or even just an original chatterbait. They're really not that bad. They're pretty much the same. I get why people are all obsessed with the jackhammer and stuff. This thing is just as good. And I like the line tie better on them. The blade is a little cheaper, but it's not a big deal. I actually like this head a lot more. I think it goes through the grass a lot better than the jackhammer one. And it's still got that awesome wire keeper. The only problem with like the originals and stuff is they have a barbed keeper and they kind of suck. It's a crappy barbed keeper, so they don't work worth crap. Just a heads up on that. So, jig colors. Alright. If I'm going to give you one tip for any of these jigs, no matter what style, whatever, you only need 3 colors. Really, you kind of only need 2 colors, to be honest. But you're going to need a green pumpkin. You're going to need a black and blue. I didn't grab any black and blues. Here, hold on. You're going to need a black and blue of any kind. Doesn't really matter. People will get all Twitter pated on it has this much blue in it, this much black, and whatever. Black and blue, don't worry about all that. I am kind of one of those guys, but like this one, I'm not really too into this jig too much. But black and blue, green pumpkin, and white. Alright, this is like a sexy shad color, but some variation of white. When I'm throwing white, I'm kind of throwing it with like flashy colors in anyway, like a sexy shad style color, or this one is like a chartreuse and white sort of color, you know, whatever. But those are really the only 3 colors you need. Alright, I'm throwing green pumpkin most of the time. Water pretty dingy. I'm throwing it. If I'm imitating crawfish, bluegill, perch, I'm throwing it. If the water gets super muddy though, and I want to imitate a crawfish or a bluegill, whatever, black and blue. When the water is really muddy, black and blue just works. Whites, I am throwing if the main food source is shad and you're imitating shad, I'm going to throw a white color. Also in muddier, like real muddy water, white or white and chartreuse and stuff seems to work pretty good. That's it. Those 3 colors. That's it. And really on like a football jig or a pitching jig, I'm not throwing white. Alright, I'm sticking with the green pumpkin or black and blue. Or maybe a brown. You know, you can, like this is like a brown color. I don't know why this color just seems to work pretty good for me. But then on swim jigs, I'm kind of a little bit more picky on color because I'm more imitating a certain kind of bait fish, you know, like this is like a bluegill style color swim jig, but really a green pumpkin works just fine. So that's why I'm just gonna say just stick with green pumpkin on that. I mean, you can go crazy with like this stuff, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just get a green pumpkin. It's gonna be completely fine. It's usually what I throw all the time on a chatterbait. If I'm imitating a bluegill or a perch or whatever. And then, but the only time I throw like a white, or this is like real chartreuse one, but whatever. This is the one I grabbed. But anytime I'm like throwing a white or whatever, is going to be on the swim jig or the chatterbait, imitating shad. So, yeah, but on a flipping jig and a football jig, I'm not going to throw a white color. Alright? Now, let's get to trailers. Trailers, same colors. Alright? So color's not even a thing. And even on like whites and stuff, sometimes I'll put like a green pumpkin trailer on it. Like whatever. But usually, green pumpkin, I'm throwing green pumpkin. Black and blue, I'm throwing black and blue. Or maybe sometimes a green pumpkin. Throwing white trailer on it. Okay, so, but here are trailers for a swim jig and a chatterbait. I'm going to lock these into the same category. Because I use the same trailers on both of those baits. So, chatterbait and a swim jig. Number one trailer is a paddle tail Swimbait. This is a Rage swimmer, Strike King Rage swimmer. Pinch off the end about that far. Oh, here you go. I got a swim jig already set up. Pinch off the end, maybe a couple inches. I want it just past that skirt, and actually the skirt is a little long on the swim jig. Sometimes I play around with skirt lengths, but you want it just a little bit past that skirt. Pretty close. I just think it gives the most action if it's, you know, just a little ways past it, really. And I do that with both chatterbaits and the swim jig. Now, the paddle tail swim baits are best, and well, they're just kind of the best anytime. But dirtier water, because this thing has a lot of action in that tail. It's just kicking, rolling like crazy. So, dirtier water, I'm usually going to throw one of these on. If I'm imitating a fish, per se. Like, I know I'm imitating a bluegill here, or whatever. This will probably be the first one I throw on. Sparse grass, also throw this guy on. Now, if the grass gets heavier, then I change the trailer a little bit. In also different situations, I change the trailer a little bit. Now, this is a new bait from Big Bite Baits, and it is called the Kamikaze Swim-On. It's kind of a funky looking thing. And I just started trying these. Like I said, they're brand new. And they are specifically made as a bladed jig trailer. You throw them in like this, so, you know, like this way, so your tail's the same direction as the hook. So it swims sideways, like so. And this is actually a pretty awesome trailer. Once the grass gets real thick, this thing comes through the grass so much better than like a paddle tail, a big tail swim bait. This thing is pretty awesome, and it's subtle, but also has quite a bit of action. It's got holes in it, which kind of like leaves like little bubbles. This is a really, really cool, neat concept that is kind of getting a lot of attention for me. So these two are really like my two right now. Not such heavy grass and dirtier water. I want this big action boob tail. Cleaner water, not as thick a grass, maybe throwing around sparse trees and stuff with like the swim jig and stuff like that, or sparse cover with the chatterbait or swim jig, whatever. This sucker just works really good. With that said, I also like to throw, and this is a bait that I make, but it's just a beaver tail style swim bait, or beaver tail style creature bait. I like to throw these on the back of swim jigs and chatterbaits as well. Same concept, sideways like this, so it's swimming like that. And usually pull off these appendages when I'm doing that, and leave this closed. And I don't know, it just gets me a lot of bites on a beaver style bait. And this is ones that I make. We don't want to talk about that right now. One day. Yeah. So those are really the three. Now, football jigs. Football jigs. My go-to trailer most of the time is a rage craw. Just because the appendages on the rage craw flap crazier than everything else. The thing I will say about rage craws, they don't want to stay upright. Okay? So, but on this football jig that stays upright amazingly already, not as big of a deal that it kind of wants to droop down a little bit. And then also when you're dragging it, it kicks. So that's really kind of a go-to on a football jig, but especially in dirty water. Dirty water, I love a rage craw on a football jig and a flipping jig, actually, because of that crazy action. They can see it better in that dirtier water. So rage craw, dirtier water, really one of my go-tos, if not my go-to on the football jig itself. Not on a flipping jig, but on a football jig, for sure. But both of them in dirtier water, for sure. Alright. Now, my number one trailer on a flipping jig or a football jig, if it's clear water or dragging it slower per se, is just a good old standard craw chunk trailer. Now this is a craw that I also made, I know, but this is modeled after like a chunk style crawfish trailer. I actually don't have any right now because I use my own that I make. One day, don't worry, you guys will be able to get those awesome baits. Okay? But like a pack of chunk, alright? They get a pack of chunk, and that's what I'm talking about. And the reason why is those claws stay upright. They stay upright like a crawfish does when it's, in a defensive posture. So on a flipping bait, I love that because it's sitting on the bottom. The flipping baits don't really, they do have a good head that will kind of stay up, but they don't tend to stay up as good as like a football jig with that big flat head and all of that. So it helps to have those appendages that stay up on their own a lot better. I just think it looks more realistic. It looks awesome. The action is not like crazy flapping like a rage tail, but that's actually a good thing in clear water and stuff. I don't want that crazy flapping action. I want a nice mellow action. Okay, another one, also for the same reason, is a beaver style trailer. This is again the one that I make and all that, blah 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 blah. But you can use any beaver style trailers. There's like the Strike King ones, the Strike King beavers, and all that stuff. Great options, whatever. But on the back of a jig, obviously I'm gonna fish it. I'm gonna put it on the jig, same way as a jig, so it's sitting like that instead of the other way, like I do on a swim jig or whatever. I want it that way. And also I'm going to leave the appendages on, and I also split the tail. I don't know why, I just like it. It works. That's also my number one. Just like if I'm gonna flip a bait without a jig on, I like a Beaver style bait. They're awesome. I don't know why. Now, sticking with like a Beaver style bait is a Missile Baits D-bomb. The thing with this D-bomb though is it also has crazy flipping action on it. So I like this one, and just kind of to change it up a lot too. If I feel like maybe a lot of more people are throwing jigs or whatever in certain places, I will throw that D-bomb, but that D-bomb's got crazy action. You can see how flappy the tail is and everything. But that D-bomb works really good in muddy water when you're flipping and pitching. Just that crazy action on the tail as it's falling gets a lot of bites. Oh man, so I talked a lot. So that's pretty much it. I have covered everything that you need to know. I know I kind of just zoomed through it. Feel free to go back and whatever, obviously. But that is seriously everything you need to know about every kind of jig that you need to be throwing. And all the trailers. So you have ideas on what to buy if you're new. Check out all those jigs and those trailers. I will put a link in the description to buy them, obviously, as well. Just the ones that I like and all that. And that's it. And use that and go and catch fish, especially on a football jig right now. Go out in 10 plus feet of water on drop-offs, ledges, hard structure, and drag a damn football jig, and you'll catch a giant. Alright, anyway, I'll see you guys on the next one. Click on my logo in the upper left hand corner to subscribe. In the upper right hand corner is the last video I made. In the lower right hand corner there's a video I know you'll enjoy. And make sure to hit that like button down below as well.